What I learned this morning at Starbucks at 6:17 a.m. is about neocortex, February 6, 2023. 1. Cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is the outermost layer of the brain. It is primarily made up of gray matter that is extensively folded, forming riders called gyri and grooves called sulci. The folding substantially increases the surface area of the cerebral cortex, making room for more neural components. Most of the cerebral cortex in humans is classified as neocortex, which is so named because it is thought to have appeared relatively recently in vertebrate evolution. Neurons in the neocortex are typically arranged in 6 layers, which are distinguished from one another by differences in cell type and cell density. The rest of the cerebral cortex is made of either allocortex, which has a more variable pattern of layering, or mesocortex, which is a transition area between the neocortex and allocortex. 2. Neocortex. The neocortex, also called the neopallium, isocortex, or the 6-layered cortex, is a set of layers of the mammalian cerebral cortex involved in higher-order brain functions such as sensory perception, cognition, generation of motor commands, spatial reasoning, and language. The neocortex is smooth in rodents and other small mammals, whereas in elephants, dolphins, and primates and other larger mammals it has deep grooves, sulci, and ridges, gyri. There is only a 30:1 ratio of neocortical gray matter to the size of the medulla oblongata in the brainstem of chimpanzees, while the ratio is 60:1 in humans. 3. Neocortex and cerebellum. The wrinkled outer layer is called the neocortex. For a long time, scientists considered the neocortex the brainiest part of the human brain, an obvious candidate for the thing that makes us unique. It is the biggest part of our brain, and it has those wrinkles that many smaller mammals just do not have. But in some ways, it is not actually that different from other mammals' brains. So researchers have started looking at other places to figure out what makes us distinctly human. Move over, neocortex, it is time to talk about the underrated cerebellum. Now, there are good reasons why scientists thought our neocortex was a major thing that made us stand out as species. Neocortex takes up about 80% of the human brain's mass. Plus, it's divided into about 200 areas that are specialized for different functions. For comparison, early mammals probably had about 20. Those 200-ish areas are responsible for a lot of functions we think of as characteristically human, like making plans, speaking, and understanding language. But as scientists dug deeper, they found some things that were not all that unique. Like, many specialized regions in our neocortex perform functions we do share with other primates. For example, the prefrontal cortex is in charge of planning and inhibitory control. And the insula is involved in gut reaction. In fact, some functions seem to be shared across nearly all mammals, like visual and auditory systems, and areas for sensory and motor control. Even though our overall brains are 238% bigger than a primate of our size, our neocortex is not out of proportion to the rest of our brain. Even a mouse lemur has a front cortex that is about the size you'd expect based on their overall brain. And humans like to fancy ourselves as fancier than a mouse lemur. All of this means our neocortex might not be particularly exceptional. And it might not be the only thing that contributed to human intelligence. So scientists have started to look at the second biggest part of the brain. It is called the cerebellum, and it is located at the back of your skull, just above your spinal cord. Cerebellum means a little brain. Even though it is small, it contains 4 times more neurons than the neocortex. In humans, the cerebellum is largely responsible for fine motor control and implicit memory. That's the kind of procedural memory you do not memorize so much as practice, like riding a bike, playing an instrument, or navigating home. Among vertebrates, we actually see the greatest size variation in the cerebellum, not the neocortex. As humans and other apes evolved, the cerebellum expanded much more rapidly than the neocortex, resulting in a cerebellum that is outsized compared to the rest of the brain. And when you look deeper, you find ever more differences. In 2021, researchers published a study that looked at methylation of DNA in human and primate brains. Methylation basically means your DNA gets some chemical hop-ons that can change how genes are expressed. They found different levels of methylation between humans and primates. But the difference was bigger in samples taken from the cerebellum than from the neocortex. What's more, the genes that were likely to have more methylation seem to be related to neuronal growth, plasticity, and learning. If those genes are being fine-tuned through methylation, our brain's growth and evolution might depend more on the cerebellum than we thought. When we look at the evolution of other animals, we tend to see an enlarged cerebellum associated with more elaborate motor skills. Like when primates and squirrels get more practice using their forelimbs to climb trees, that can favor a bigger cerebellum, which further enhances their motor skills. As humans evolved, the expansion of our cerebellum likely increased our technical capabilities, like our skill in making tools. That is crucial, because a hallmark of human intelligence is that we make tools better than any other animal. And we could not do that without an advanced cerebellum helping us plan and coordinate complex sequences of actions. In addition, our cerebellum-fueled technical skills may have driven the development of language and syntax. Speech itself is an extreme fine motor skill, and we do have neural connections between the cerebellum and areas of the cortex involved in language. Research suggests that the human cerebellum expanded at the same time our language and verbal memory abilities emerged. Which makes sense, because scientists think human language may have evolved largely to help us teach each other how to create tools from stones and plants. The more scientists investigate the cerebellum, the more central it seems to human abilities. It helps us perform complex actions in a smooth and coordinated way, whether those actions are crafting cooking tools or engaging in cognition and conversation. And it is considered a learning machine capable of predicting outcomes and adapting after making errors. That is not to say the neocortex is not really important. Neocortex and cerebellum are densely linked, and they closely coordinate to produce thoughts and behaviors. So, to discover how humans operate, we need to look at the whole brain. Again, when it comes to the neocortex, size is not everything. Sarah, please keep studying and think positive. God bless you and good luck.